Welcome back. So I'm hoping by now you'll have a list of some previous negotiations that you've taken part in. Don't worry how they went. Some may have gone well, some may have gone badly. What I would like you to do though is also to reflect on how they went. Maybe you have your own thoughts and opinions on things you could have done to improve them, whatever it may have been, maybe difficult circumstances, not being the right place at the right time. Maybe you're in an emotional state or mood that could have affected things. Whatever it is, there could be many, many things that yourself could have been done differently to improve that situation. A lot of it could also come down to being physically prepared or mentally prepared also. Okay, so it's always good to reflect. I'm hoping that you'll also have a list of negotiations that you're going to be carrying out in the near future. So you'll have preparation time to get ready for each of those negotiations, whatever it may be, and however important it may be also. So with that list ready, let's now move on to another question. This question is again one that I ask to all of my trainees, whatever level of negotiation ability they're currently at. It does agitate some people because it seems simple at face value. The question is, what is a negotiation? Now, typically when I ask people this question, what is a negotiation? And I'd like you to think about what answer you would give as well, please. Typically, when I ask people, I usually get bombarded by buzzwords. For example, well, it's using leverage to gain the upper hand, or it's to get a win-win situation and scenario, or it's to overcome objectives to reach a common goal. These are the typical answers that I get given. What I'd like to do now is break down some misconceptions about what a negotiation actually is. And again, just working towards changing your mindset to give you a better overall picture of the scenario that you're actually going to be thrust into when you're negotiating. First, we're going to look at the negotiation as a bulk process itself, and then also at some definitions of what a negotiation actually is. So here, as you can see, I've concisely and as precisely as possible broken down the negotiation process into a sentence and also a series of behaviors. Let's begin with the process itself. So negotiation is a dynamic process carried out by independent parties. Now, this is always true. You're independent in the fact that you have your own preferences, although you are united by a shared objective. Now, this is key because often when people enter into a negotiation situation, they believe that their counterpart is in some way their enemy or against them, which is actually the opposite of what is true. In any negotiation situation, the reason you're there is because you want to work together to achieve a common goal. So the more you can alter your mindset to being an ally or a friend of your counterpart, the better chances you have of reaching a win-win solution. It's not always as cut and dry and easy as that. But do bear that in mind. You should go in as best as you possibly can, looking to collaborate and cooperate with your counterpart. If that is not reciprocated, then maybe you have to change your approach, but that is always the best way to go in. It has longevity as well. If you want repeat business and further cooperation in the long term, that is the only way to go. Now, the second bullet point there requires a collection of behaviors. Now, this is not an exhaustive list. And as you'll see, the first one on the list is sales. Now, the reason I want to mention sales is because people are often very confused about the differences between selling and negotiating. Let me break it down very simply for you with an example. Imagine you want to buy a car, but you don't know what car you want to buy. So you go into the car showroom and you speak to the salesperson. It's their job not just to sell their services, their service offering, but also influence you or question you to find out your requirements, your specifications, and what you need from a car. It's their job to sell the car to you based on your requirements. Now, when that has been done, when they know you want the car, when you know you want the car, and it's just the final details that need to be discussed, that is when, and that is only when, the negotiation should come in. Often people jump into a negotiation when the sales element hasn't been completely finished. For example, if someone isn't 100% certain about the color or the size of a car, there's no point talking about price or terms at that particular point. But also, when you have, for example, completed the sales process and you've moved on to the negotiation process, at some point within the negotiation, either side may discover that there is something within the product or service itself or the deal itself that they're not completely sold on. At which point, both people should be putting their sales hats back on and working together to discuss whether or not the product or service or merger or acquisition, whatever it is the desired fit. When that has been done again, move back, put on your negotiation hat and continue with the negotiation. Don't try and do both at the same time. Don't mix and match. They're very separate things. Okay, now the second one, sociology. Understanding people and, social communication. Obviously, extremely important, comes down to rapport. And we'll be talking about how to build rapport to improve your chances of negotiation later on in the course. Psychology as well, understanding other people. And we have a specific section in this course on understanding how other people are thinking or even what they're thinking about when we look at VAK eye movements as to whether somebody is constructing what they're currently thinking and saying or remembering it. This is good for sales and negotiation, actually. Assertiveness. Now, how assertive should you be within the negotiation? When we talk about distributive and integrative negotiations later on in the course, I'll be discussing assertiveness a fair bit. Again, the best way if you want longevity and the best out of the relationship as well as the deal so that it carries on going in the long term, you want to be matching the assertiveness of your counterpart so that that will help to build your rapport. Communication is what it says on the tin. It's being able to communicate, active listening, and clear, concise communication is obviously important in a negotiation. The clearer you can be, not jumping into things unless you're completely certain about what your response should be given the responses from your counterpart. Active listening is the first element. Listen before speaking. And finally, conflict resolution. Now, dealing with conflict, ideally, conflicts shouldn't happen in a negotiation. If people can leave their emotions by the wayside, then an emotional conflict shouldn't happen. Obviously, if there is a conflict of ideas and opinions, that's a slightly different thing. We'll be talking about that later on in the course. Now, in continuation, I'd like to give you some definitions of a successful negotiation. You may have your own. I'd like you to think about what your own definition would be. Here we have one from dictionary.com. The arrangement of terms of a transaction or agreement for mutual benefit. Second one is Stanford School of Business. Getting what you want at a price that is acceptable. And the third one, maximizing the size of the pie and ensuring everyone is happy with their slice of it. And that's actually a quote from me. So I hope you like it. Final thing to note, as I'm sure you've heard before, is to always try and go for a win-win solution. Now, this is not always possible. In an ideal world, it would be, but unfortunately, we're not in an ideal world, especially when it comes to negotiating. The thing to know is when to walk away. Planning ahead and having a system in place, which again we'll discuss later in the course, knowing when it is not going to be beneficial to you, and also knowing when it's not going to be beneficial to your counterpart. As I mentioned, the best thing is to look out for each other. If you do, it's going to help with a long-lasting relationship. So knowing when to walk away, but this takes planning. So please stay tuned and we'll be going through that later on in the course.